Well, we were invited to a farm near Tsumeb. That's in Namibia, Southwest Africa. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. Tsumeb is up in the north. It's quite a wild place, actually. And like all places north in Namibia, there are big snakes, pythons, Anchides cobras, mambas, and so on. And this farmer said there was a very, very big python on that farm. He wanted us to catch it, take it away, because it had eaten more than, I think it was at that time, 2 of his calves. It normally ate antelope calves, but they had moved cattle into one of the camps and it had now eaten its second calf. And calves carry quite a value, beef calves, and so he wanted it moved. We actually didn't like moving snakes, but if we had to save the poor snake getting a bullet, then of course we would do it. So up we went. And the farmer didn't think we'd ever find it because they weren't sure where it was. They knew it had eaten the calves because the calves went missing and there was no sign of blood or a struggle as if a cat had taken it. There are leopard there are cheetah. And so the only other culprit could be a python. And of course they get very big. I've had pythons that easily swallow calves, even a 3-4 month old calf they kill and swallow. So he wasn't quite sure that we were going to find this snake. We did find it. I'll tell you about it, but not this time. What I wanted to tell you about this particular trip, which was one of the funniest things that has ever happened, is that he also had German guests coming to the farm, tourists. And he had a beautiful swimming pool. You know, it's very hot in Namibia in summer. Beautiful swimming pool, beautiful lush green lawns in the middle of this desolate oasis. It's very arid at times there before the rains come. Very hot. And of course, a lily white German tourist wants nothing more than to go and lie in the baking hot sun on a towel on a lush green lawn right next to the swimming pool with beautiful trees around, and there are wild animals and the promise of a game drive in the evening, and then traditional German Southwest African food and a barbecue which they call a braai in Afrikaans. And of course they have their German equivalent for it, and and there were lots of wild animals, I said. So that day the tourists arrive. We, on the other hand, have now pushed off into the bush, and we get the story. So incredibly funny, the story. You know, especially in the old days when people spoke on radio, presenters, they had a very officious way about them, very staccato sort of way of speaking, and it was prevalent on the radio programs, especially in rural areas, where you would have these presenters speaking on topics and sounding in this very officious, very staccato, as I said, and it's almost robotic-like, the speech. Anyway, so there was an attendant there. He, I think, if I remember correctly, he was either an Avambo or an Herero, but he spoke Afrikaans, and he spoke his own language, of course. And he was in attendance that day around near the pool, and the German tourist lady had come to lie down on her towel next to the pool, as I said, and she was just like closing her eyes and soaking up the sun beautifully, when very quietly a gigantic giraffe walked up to the hedge line, bent over because he was used to eating the lush grass next to the pool, bent over and started munching the grass right next to this tourist, this German tourist. So the German tourist opens her eyes and sees the giraffe, sits up, screams and faints. So the attendant, the gardener, he phones up his boss, and this is the story we got. He says, "Boss, I'm going to tell it to you in Afrikaans and I'll translate for you." He says, "Boss, die missies sy lê in die son langs die swembad. En die kameelperd kom en hy vreet die gras langs haar. En sy word wakker. En sy skreeu en dan slaap sy. En nou sit sy daar langs die swembad en sy praat net soos die radio." And so what that roughly means in English is that the German tourist was lying in the sun next to the swimming pool, and the giraffe came along, as it usually did, stuck his head over and started to eat the grass next to the lady. So the lady heard the noise, woke up, saw this enormous giraffe's head next to her. Jolty sat up in a jolt, screamed, and then passed out. And then she became delirious. So she sat up and started speaking like the radio, as he put it, because indeed, when you're delirious, you sound like the staccato presenter on those old-time radio programs. So the attendant figured she sounded just like one of those presenters. So sy praat nou net soos die radio. She speaks now just like the radio. Anyway, she passed out again after all that, and the giraffe presently went away. She then woke up and ran screaming into the house, and I'm sure she changed her mind about where she should sunbathe after that. Very, very funny incident. Hey, by the way, I do have Patreon, so you can join me there too.